state the reality of life in South Africa. Wealth remains highly concentrated. 95% of wealth is in the hands of 10% of the population. 35% of the labor force are unemployed or have given up hope of finding work. Despite our progress in education, over half of all children in grade 5 cannot yet read adequately in any language. More than half of all school leavers each year enter the labor market without a senior certificate pass. 75% of these will still be unemployed 5 years later. Our towns and cities remain divided, spatially and otherwise, and poverty is concentrated in townships, informal settlements, and rural areas. Our growth has been too slow. It's 1% a year in real per capita terms over the past 25 years, well below that of countries such as Brazil, Turkey, Indonesia, India, and China. These are our realities. These are the realities that we must seek to transform and change. They mirror the stresses of poverty and vulnerability in many developing countries and the inequality between rich and poor throughout the world. On the question of South Africa's economy, our expectation at this stage is that GDP growth will increase from 0.5% in the past year to 1.3% in 2017, and will continue to improve very moderately over the medium term. Clearly, these numbers are too low and highly inadequate. The services sector was the main contributor to growth in 2016, bringing nearly 120,000 new work opportunities to the table. Mining continued to underperform, while manufacturing output was supported by buoyant sales in petrochemicals, food and beverages, and motor vehicles. Mining and manufacturing employment declined by 80,000 jobs in 2016. Weak business confidence and low levels of profitability weighed on investment across all sectors. Though the policy interest rate has increased by 2 percentage points since 2014, inflation ended the year above target. The food prices continuing to reflect the impact on agriculture of poor rainfall. Lower growth amongst our trading partners in Africa and elsewhere has contributed to sluggish export performance. We expect somewhat higher growth in the coming year on the strength of a number of favorable trends that are emerging. Commodity prices have rebounded. Hopefully they stay that way. The exchange rate has recovered from its rapid depreciation last year, which bodes well for capital flows, inflation, and business and consumer confidence. Drought conditions have abated in most of the country. Production stoppages associated with industrial disputes have been comparatively low, and electricity supply has improved, allowing new connections and industrial demand to be accommodated. But the projected rate of growth is not sufficient to reduce unemployment or impact significantly on poverty and inequality. It falls well short of our NDP targets. Government recognizes the needs articulated by students in universities and TVET colleges. As the economy grows, we will be able to do more to finance an expansion in tertiary education opportunities and improvements in student funding. Madam Speaker, in addition to the increase of 32 billion rands we made in the higher education allocations in last year's budget and the 2016 MTBS, we have added a further 5 billion rands in the outer year of this MTEF. Government has provided funds to ensure that no student whose combined family income is below 600,000 rands per annum will face fare increases at universities and TVET colleges for 2017. All poor students who have applied and qualified for NSFAS awards and who have been accepted by a university or TVET college will be supported. The Hare Commission of Inquiry into Higher Education and Training, established by the President, will complete its work by June this year. The Interministerial Committee on Higher Education, led by Minister Hadebe, is engaging all stakeholders to discuss the various issues affecting this area. Civil society initiatives involving business, churches, and other organizations have created both the space and the opportunity for a diversity of options to be considered. The President has invited stakeholders to participate in these processes that are underway so that all views are heard and all contributions accepted. Given the magnitude of student funding requirements, it is imperative that we find consensus on a clear roadmap towards a better higher education and training system, and a roadmap we're going to need for the next 5 to 10 years. It will clearly indicate how society will achieve access, opportunity, financing, and support for students in the university and further education sectors. Several broad principles assist in finding the way forward and developing this roadmap. Government is determined to address the challenges identified in post-school education and training in a phased manner. Resources will be taken into account in determining the pace with which these can be addressed. Government stands ready to engage with education stakeholders and adapt financing arrangements as may be required in future years within the scope of available resources. Universities, students, and education stakeholders share responsibility for improving access and quality and the diversity of higher education and training provided within a framework of consultation rather than confrontation. A growing contribution is needed from employers and industry through funding of bursaries, internship opportunities, and research programs, recognizing that this is the foundation of future productivity and technology advances in our economy. Madam Speaker, the 2017 budget reflects a balance between maintaining our spending commitments and ensuring long-term health of the public finances. And that's the responsibility that the public has given us. Slow economic growth has held us back, and so decisive steps are needed to strengthen confidence, investment, and growth. Acting too quickly to reduce the deficit would harm service delivery, delay economic recovery, and compromise tax revenue collection. But to ignore our fiscal targets will result in interest rate hikes, unsustainable commitments, and credit rate downgrades. This is a scenario in which short-term gains would quickly give way to financial stress, capital flight, and cutbacks in service delivery. To ensure a balanced and sustainable recovery, we indicated in the medium-term budget policy statement that we will raise an additional 28 billion rands in tax revenues. We also need to reduce spending by a total of 26 billion rands over the next 2 years. Proposed expenditure for 2017-18 totals 1.56 trillion rands. Interest on debt amounts to 169 billion rands. That's the interest that we're paying on 2.2 trillion rands worth of debt presently. And that begins to push out the kind of expenditure we want to undertake both on social services and on economic support. Projected revenue in this financial year, the coming financial year, amounts to 1.4 trillion rands. The balance of 149 billion, or 3.1% of GDP, is the amount we need to borrow in 2017-2018. Let me repeat that. 149 billion rands needs to be borrowed in the year 2017-2018. Government debt now stands at 2.2 trillion rands, or about 50% of GDP. Interest payments are a rising share of expenditure, as I've just indicated. And by acting now to stabilize debt, we will ensure that future generations will not pay for today's expenses some 20 or 30 years hence. Over the medium term, expenditure on public services will continue to grow moderately above inflation. A substantial additional allocation to higher education is again proposed, adding 5 billion rands to the 32 billion rands previously announced. I thought Minister Nzimande would jump up a little bit. We will, of course, he's got a partner in the president these days. We will continue to safeguard expenditure that protects poor households. It is only right that if households and firms face tough choices in balancing their income and expenses, the same disciplines must be applied in public expenditure as well. In other words, that which we expect the public to do, we in government must also do. Citizens must rightly demand accountability to ensure public funds are used for the intended purposes.